I click onto the global tropical overview for May the 28th, 2024. As is always the case in these videos, the thought expression are mine alone, and in making any decisions ahead of any tropical cyclones, look toward the local office, local emergency management, and local tropical cyclone warning center. So we still have our same two systems active across the eastern hemisphere today. We've got tropical cyclone Ramal here, is still moving over Bangladesh and India, producing a lot of heavy rainfall across this region. And we've also got Typhoon Ewiniar, still a typhoon by the Joint Typhoon Warning Center, as the sun rises over the region, now starting to speed away from the Philippines. And we're really going to talk about this one for the main part of this video. Here's a close-up visible loop as the sun rises. You can see that the system is not looking as good on the initial satellite imagery as it did yesterday. The system has been disrupted heavily by some factors that we talked about yesterday. It seems like both factors played some role into the weakening of the storm. We had some apparent dry air intrusion from downsloping winds in eastern Luzon, but also we had an increase in shear. In fact, it looks like the shear may have been a little bit stronger than models had anticipated. And you can see that here, if we look at the big scale water vapor loop, and you can see here's your upper trough that we talked about yesterday, now further east and now further south. And if you look here towards the base of the trough, we've got a lot of westerly flow or northwesterly flow coming right towards the storm, and this has really impacted the storm pretty heavily. Now, normally the shear that this has been bringing would not be all too big of a deal for a well-developed tropical cyclone, but the thing with Ewiniar, we talked about this yesterday, is that it's very small. You can still see that it's fairly small right now, not too much bigger than the landmass here of Luzon in the Philippines, and smaller storms like this are very susceptible to environmental conditions like wind shear. They can go up real quick, but they can also turn down real quick, and that's what we saw. And some estimates suggested that this system may have dropped below typhoon intensity before now. I think now it is starting to intensify a little bit. If you look at the satellite imagery, it looks a bit better than it did, say, last night. We now have a lot of deep convection once again firing over the apparent center. The center appears to be somewhere underneath this. We can confirm this by an earlier ASCAT pass, which did show that the center was underneath it. And also, if you look at the low-level cloud motions, there's no real evidence of the center being even on the western fringe of this convection. It appears to be right underneath these deep convective bursts. Now, having said that, the system still has a lot of work to do if it wants to get itself back to where it was, and it's probably not going to happen just with the time it has over the warm water. So you can see this from a microwave pass that we got not too long ago. It is a half pass, but we can get a general idea of what the structure looks like from this regardless. And you can see that compared to yesterday, there's just no well-defined intercore structure. Where we had an eye wall yesterday morning, now we have just a couple of deep thunderstorms around. No real formed eye wall nor an eye. One thing I did notice on the low level one, you can see there is sort of this cyan colored ring here. This is often an indicator that the system will eventually, with time, be able to build an intercore structure from this and be able to intensify. But like I mentioned, the thing is about Ewiniar now is it's running out of time. You can see, compared to yesterday especially, it is now beginning to really pick up its pace as this big trough now arrives in the South China Sea. And the system has not much time over warm water once it does speed up. You can see here's a sea surface temperature map, and the 26-degree isotherm is right here. And if it's speeding along here, it may have maybe a little bit more time because it is tracking a little bit further east than we talked about a few days ago. But still, for a fast-moving storm, this is not a lot of real estate. And keep in mind, this system has to completely rebuild its eye and eye wall structure if it wants to really get to its former intensity. And I just don't think it's going to happen in this case. Now, I think some intensification is going to happen. I don't think the wind shear is having as strong of an effect as it was, say, last night. It looks to be restacked. I don't know if the centers ever became decoupled, vertically that is. But it seems better organized now. It seems to be getting itself ready for an intensification phase. Now, one thing that may help it is that today the trough is going to come more into a better alignment relative to the system. See, you can see all this accelerating flow here, this jet streak here over Japan. If I go back, you can see this is about right now. It's not in optimal position to favor the storm. Once it gets into this position, though, further east, this will allow the poleward outflow channel to really accelerate away from the storm. And this should work to negate some of the impacts of this shear from the trough here as it tracks northeast. And that may allow an opportunity. That will be, I'd say, its final opportunity to intensify some. But once it crosses the 26-degree isotherm, that's about it for the storm. And you can see that here on Pegasus forecast cone, keeping it a typhoon, but weakening pretty quickly once it does go further northeast into cooler waters. They have it weakening to a severe tropical storm by Thursday, local time. And then once that happens, the system will continue to go northward and may bring impacts to Japan as a more non-tropical system, and that will be the end of Ewiniar. One more thing, we do have the potential for more development in the West Pacific. This is not going to be in your traditional area that you would expect in the tropics. It's going to be mainly from all this convection here and all this energy that you can see in this frontal boundary coming east with this upper trough. You can see how it's sort of draping down here into the South China Sea. Now, over the next few days, this southern tail of it is going to hang around here in the South China Sea, and some of this remnant energy may have an opportunity to develop into a tropical cyclone here. You can see it on the GFS model. Again, here's the 10-meter wind plot, and you can see we have northwesterly winds, or northerly winds rather, here coming out of South Korea and eastern China, and then south of the boundary we have winds coming out of the south. So the boundary is somewhere here, and it's draping down here into the South China Sea. And as we go through time on the GFS model, you can see eventually we do see some development attempted here on the model. Now, this isn't looking to be a very strong system when it develops. The GFS is not very strong at all with the storm. There will be a little bit of shear. There may be some moderate shear in place. But having said that, it does have, appears to be, a fairly divergent pattern aloft with this upper high placed directly over it, and this may aid development there. And really the main thing that the system will be bringing in terms of impacts is rainfall to this region, and particularly in South China around Hong Kong. But it could also track northeast and bring rainfall to Japan and Taiwan, and if it tracks south enough, maybe to northern Luzon in the Philippines. But you can see this system moves out pretty quick, and after this we're really gonna sort of watch the Western Hemisphere, Eastern Pacific, North Atlantic as we head into June, as we could be getting development there. And it looks like the West Pacific and the Indian Ocean are going to quiet down a bit after this little bit of an active period. That's all that I've got for today. I'll have more videos, maybe one more this week on Ewiniar, and more videos as necessary on the system in the South China Sea. That's all for now. Thanks for watching.